Good afternoon. I'm Sam, and it's a pleasure to be here. I've got a few things I want to talk about, and the first thing is that the UN never ever thinks about video gaming, and yet it's the most powerful media channel on the planet. And so Trista Patterson, who's sitting over there, and I came up with a concept for the UN to start thinking quite deeply about the role that the video gaming industry can play to move this agenda forward. And so where we got to is Trista and I co-authored this report called Playing for the Planet, and we've got a few copies down here that outlines what we think the industry can do. And so I've just got about 10 minutes just to give you some suggestions about what we think might be possible. And I think right now things are looking pretty tough. And this is a yes and problem where we need to get all hands on deck to make a difference. I think 2019 we've seen some extraordinary events that nobody thought were possible. So we've had huge hurricanes through the Caribbean. We've had a very hot summer in the UK. We've had the Amazon and Australia catch fire. And we've also had events that are surprising us all. So the tipping points that people are fearing from the science are starting to bear fruit. And so what happens at Glasgow at the climate summit at the end of this year, with the commitments from countries, will determine whether we're on a 1.5 degree trajectory or not. So really the urgency that we're facing is now. And so the UN environment is behind the Sustainable Development Goals. And so if we think about the kind of world that we want, without a healthy biosphere, so a clean ocean, trees, etc., all the other goals are harder to attain. So really the environment is what sustains life on Earth, and we need to do everything we can to deliver on that. We're in a tough spot. So this is my boss's boss, I think, Antonio, or Big Tony. And so he says, to waste this opportunity would compromise our last best chance to stop runaway climate change. It would not only be immoral, but it would be suicidal. And I think what's interesting is public opinion is ahead of the politics that we have right now. And I think industry is stepping up in a way that we didn't think was possible. So we've been doing a lot behind the scenes with Microsoft. And the commitment they made last week is the kind of transformative step up that we need to see everybody make. So it's not about being carbon neutral, it's about being carbon negative and thinking quite deeply about what you're able to do. So, but I think with this, fatalism is a virus that infects people that thinks, why should I bother? If it looks that bad, then let's give up. But really my thing is, hope is contagious, and nothing is inevitable unless we choose it to be. And this is why I think the video gaming industry, as partners in this, have the most degree of creativity. They inspire people to think differently, and they connect and create communities that aren't there. So this is why we thought the Playing for the Planet initiative was something that we could really make a difference on. And in the room I can see Vladimir from Creative Mobile, Paul's just come in from Green Man, and Jake's at the back as well from Internet of Elephants. So really this is an initiative with the industry. We're facilitating it as the UN. So we launched it in September, and Grid Arundel, where Trista works and Playmob help bring the communities together. And the aim is to really think about how we can have more mindful gaming that's authentic with gameplay, doesn't interrupt fun, and allows people to make different choices through that experience. And so for us it really is to think about a different type of way of communicating with people, and to really start to get people to decarbonise their platforms as well. And so there's some interesting work, Sports Interactive with Miles Jacobson has started to think differently about packaging, and there's some other partners going to think about that, so we don't have to have plastic on everything, and other commitments are set to come through as well. And so we've got 21 companies on board already with a combined reach of 97 million, and more are set to join as well. So there's a great pipeline of new talent coming through. So Bandai Namco I think will join soon, and it's Pac-Man's 40th. And so I think he'll be donning the green wellies and green gloves. And then also some other big platforms are starting to get excited about this as well. So what we're looking to do is to make it an inclusive opportunity for the many, rather than an exclusive partnership for the few. This is a little film that gives you a sense of what we're about. If we have any sound. No? No sound?
that knows no bounds. From young to old, from Brazil to Bangladesh, everyone is playing. Now, the video game industry wants to play their part in the biggest challenge of our time. To keep our planet beautiful and level up in the battle against climate change. To help the UN achieve the global goals by forming a new alliance for action. We have no time to lose. The future lies in our hands. Together, we can all play for the planet.
Great. Okay. So the gaming industry, I think, has a superpower that is unrivaled. Whether you're a kid in Nigeria or in New York, everybody's playing games. And so what I think is fascinating is that if you look at the countries where gameplay is at its highest, it's China, it's India, and then we have Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Mexico, all on that list. These are all locations where development is about to go through a screaming arc, and the choices that the children make in those countries will determine our future. And so for us, we really think it's an interesting opportunity to reach the many, not just the few. I also think for me, in terms of reach, attention, demographic and revenue, this industry simply doesn't compete. And so the way I think about this is the BBC was created as a mass broadcaster for the many, that was a public service entity. And I think the video gaming industry could play that role if it's thought through in the right way. Also, the nudge unit in British government, David Halpin and I are thinking about how do we integrate nudges across different platforms. So we're doing something called the Little Book of Green Nudges for universities. So when you're a student, you can be thought and taught about how you can make better choices, so they become habits as you grow older. And we think there's some insight around nudge and behaviour change that the video gaming industry can consider, particularly for environmental outcomes. So the door is open, and the way to get involved is quite simple, really. The first thing is about decarbonising your platform, to think about benchmarking where you're at in energy, travel, procurement, events, and operations. Learn from others. Supercell, Rovio, SpaceApe, and Supercell have really thought quite deeply about their footprint, what they could do differently, and then come on board with a voluntary commitment. This is where I think it gets more interesting, which is inspiring action through play. So we're working with SpaceApe and others about a new game jam looking at live games to see about how we can bring about more mindful play that has an environmental outcome as well. And the way we do that is asking 3 questions that we're going to put together later this week. We were talking with Sony about pause in play to kind of save energy and power, which they're looking to do. And there's other insights for acquisition. So instead of just chucking your money at Google and Facebook, are there ways within which there could be new incentives around trees for acquisition? And I also think there's something around gameplay which often projects a dystopian rather than utopian future. And it doesn't have to be like that. And there's something about collaboration over competition. And so are there ways within which there can be a more mindful approach to play? And the other thing is, I think about listen to your community and choose a cause. There's a lot of people who are very keen on marine litter. It's a huge problem. And E-Line, that have done some of the most beautiful games like Never Alone, are thinking about a whole load of ocean-based games where they're looking to do some give back in that. Also nature-based solutions, Microsoft, with their $1 billion commitment last week, are thinking about what else they can do with that funds to give back in terms of trees. I mean, trees are the best technology we have to deal with climate change. They can suck carbon better than anything else, and yet we just view them as something that is part of a landscape rather than something that we rely on. And so we need to get 1 trillion trees back in this world, and that's what we're planning to do for the next decade. And there's a challenge there for the gaming industry to take on as well. I also think for the industry, this is a chance to have a different story. I feel like the industry is often a doormat for people that want to kind of wipe their crap on. And this is a chance to really show what difference the industry can make. And so for me, I feel like there are problems within the industry, but there's a lot of good stuff that the industry can do if it chooses to. And so I do think there's a chance to build a new narrative around this. And so I think my question to you is really that this initiative is just providing handrails for you to walk along. We don't need to tell you where to go or what to do, but just to give you kind of tips and ideas about what difference that you could make. And I think the initiative that Trista and I have started with support of many people in the room is really for the UN to facilitate rather than own. You know the industry better than we do, but we're just setting you out a challenge and an opportunity to give back and make a difference, knowing that that's probably what your players want, knowing that that's probably what your staff want, and knowing probably that that's what you want, otherwise you wouldn't be in the room listening to me go on. So I'll leave it there, and I just open the floor for any questions if you have them. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Cheers.
All right, questions?
Hi, first of all, thank you very much. This was fascinating. We've been doing a lot of research into this over the past year and a bit, right? And one of the things that's been a real struggle is figuring out all the places where these little bits of funding are available. Because there are actually all kinds of quite interesting little funds that specifically target these kinds of products. Rarely specifically for games, but you can usually kind of wheedle your way through. But one of the resources that I feel we're definitely missing is some kind of centralized place where it's possible to get information about, where it's possible to get support, about where it's possible to get funding, where we can get information to make sure that what we're giving to players in games is correct, rather than just passing on our own preconceptions about sustainability. Is this something you might be able to provide in some way?
Sure. I think Trista and I were talking this afternoon about research, and there's an IGDA that's going to come together, probably led by Google, to think about best practice. On funding, I think in terms of signposting, we may be able to offer that. We don't have deep pockets on this, but we know other people that might do. Exactly. So I think for us, this initiative's 4 months old, so it's still learning to walk. And if there's things that would be more useful for us to help you with, then yeah, let us know, and we'll see what we can do. Great.
Well, any other questions? I thought I saw a hand, but...
Thanks a lot for that conference. I seen the articles a few weeks ago on the main gaming companies on board. I've seen also some glaring omissions, such as Nintendo. I mean, is it in the pipe? Was it a straight no? How will you expand the list of sponsors on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Nintendo have a very specific Japanese culture, and they do a lot of good work already in their game. And I think what they've done, particularly with device designers, is really very, very good. I think many people are stepping back, either waiting to see what happens next. I think the ESA plays a certain role, maybe in some of that hesitation, but the ESA have seen this as a very positive initiative that they want to come on board. I think different people work at different paces, and I think for us, it's not to dictate how fast you join this. It's just to say this is happening, and you can come when you're ready. So we are in discussion with Nintendo. We do think they will join at some point, and the idea is to scale this quite rapidly so that it becomes almost like a normative process within the industry. So they're thinking, so when a new game is being designed, that they've built that in at the beginning rather than retrofitting at the end, and it just becomes a process that is just natural, rather than something that it's a bit like, well, I don't know quite what we do with that. So that's where we're at with that process. I just wanted to see, Vladimir, could I just put you on the spot just for you to describe what you've done in terms of some of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're mainly focusing on using our live events to subtly integrate green nudges and talk about serious topics. And the way we look at it, we're not the biggest guys in this alliance, and we're not the biggest game developer publisher in the industry. and we're quite small compared to some of the bigger names. But big or small, we still talk to some 30 million players every year. And over the last 10 years, we've been in the business. We've acquired over 400 million players, and that's probably billions of play minutes. So surely, on that scale, there is space for serious conversation without taking away anything from the entertainment value or core topics of the games. So what we're doing, we are designing our live events in a way that plays off the environmental themes, such as collecting garbage, saving forests, in very subtle ways. So we're not being obvious with the messaging. We're not telling people, hey, we are in this alliance now, and you should do this. But we are raising those topics, we're leaving it with the players to think about. And as a closing thought, I was listening to your slides now, to your presentation. I was thinking that since we joined the Alliance in September, I actually changed my own ways a little bit. I changed my habits, which was not the point, and it was never the goal of this participation, but it just shows that thinking about something really works, even if it's not, you know, obvious call to action or obvious messaging.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Sam.
Great. Thank you.